Welcome to This Morning on Asakhe podcast, your daily dose of insightful conversation on current affairs, politics, and social issues. Please share and also follow us on social media at Site ZW. Now, stay tuned to today's episode.
A very good morning to you guys. Welcome to the Thursday edition of This Morning on Asakhe. My name is Brighton. Good morning to you, Northika, this morning.
Good morning, Brighton, and good morning to our guests. Welcome to This Morning on Asakhe. Today we're going to be talking about, service delivery issues, and, the topical issue has been water, the water bills and all that. And joining us today is Zibusiso Dube to talk about smart water meters. Is this the solution?
Right, so over the past week, there was the full council meeting in Bulawayo. I was watching the full council meeting in Zolo. The much debate was on the issue of the prepaid water meters. Some are saying, let's do this prepaid water meters to collect debts. Let's do this prepaid water meters so people can pay for what they consume. Z has been working on that. He's been worked on that before with BUPRA, in terms of advocates working on that issue of smart water meters. Good morning to you, Z.
Good morning, Brighton.
Thanks so much, Z, for joining us this morning. Maybe give us a background in terms of your work with BUPRA before, in terms of working with, in terms of smart water meters.
At a very surface level, the reasons why these prepared water meters are seen as a solution, they seem cogent and very reasonable. But it's when you go a little bit deeper that you see that there are some underlying problems. So as BUPRA, we did some research on the issue. And part of what we found was that at a very basic level, the aspect of prepared water meters and this aspect of cost recovery is based on a neoliberalism understanding where water is viewed more as a commodity rather than a human right. So this means that if you haven't paid for water in terms of this model, you can't have access to it. So we then at that time did a research, and part of our research was showing that more than half of adults in Zimbabwe were earning less than $100 a month. The poverty datum line at the time was very high. So part of the concern that we then had from our research was that it seemed that prepared water meters would serve to enhance inequalities in society, where those who are wealthy can use as much water as they like, yet those who are poor may fail to meet the basic needs. So we did research on use of prepared water meters in other countries, in areas like South Africa, Mozambique, Zambia, and so forth. We found that the case is that more often than not, poor people end up not having enough water for their basic needs when prepared water meters are rolled out. One of the cases we studied was of a place called Madlebe in KwaZulu-Natal in South Africa, where there was a cholera outbreak and dozens of people died after introduction of prepared water meters. And then there are also other challenges with prepared water meters that seem to not be understood in the context of Zimbabwe, where they work best where there is a constant supply of water. In areas where there are always water cuts and then there is lots of air blowing through the meters, they may not work so well. They may have false readings and other technical challenges. That's also part of the stuff that our research found. Yeah, and but basically, what we found was that the issue of inequality and human rights was a major concern when it comes to the issue of prepared water meters. So yes, it makes sense that there should be cost recovery measures, and that the city council needs to recover on its debt and so forth. But we should be mindful of some of the other contextual issues, such as the fact that most of us right now in Zimbabwe are hovering around the poverty datum line. So if we're saying people must pay for water in advance, what are we saying about the right to water? What are we saying about the need for women who may have more need for water due to their unique hygiene requirements? What are we saying really about those who are not as well off in society? Should the rich be allowed to fill up their swimming pools and water their lawns because they can afford, while the poor don't get enough for even drinking and for cleaning their toilets? So those are some of the questions. So I am not saying prepared water meters are wrong, but I'm saying we should not start with a solution. We should first start by understanding the problem before we come up with the solution.
Thank you so much, Z, for that background. Maybe just as a follow-up, did you also maybe do some research in terms of how these have been implemented in Zimbabwe and the challenges that maybe residents are facing, or the benefits that they are getting from these smart water meters?
So at the time that we did this research, around 2014, 2015, there were not many case studies on use of prepared water meters within the local context in Zimbabwe. So most of our research focused on other areas in mainly Southern Africa, like I said, areas like South Africa, Zambia, and Mozambique. But what stood out really was that prepared water meters do not work very well in poor communities, where people may be forced to not get adequate amounts of water to meet their basic needs because they simply do not have the money to purchase that water. So for poor people, their life is a constant struggle for trade-offs between what you purchase and what you don't purchase. So if you have to purchase water, sometimes maybe you have to forego school fees for your kids. Sometimes if you have to pay school fees, then you forego maybe taking your cow to the deep or something. So those are the kind of trade-offs that people who are at the very lowest ranks of society have to go through. And that seems to be the case across poor communities, be it in Zimbabwe or South Africa or so forth. So I'm not sure how it's working in the smart meters are working in the communal areas here in Zimbabwe. But what I do know is that where people don't have money, if they are required to pay for water upfront, sometimes they will make the decision to not get that water and then opt for unsafe sources.
One of the main issues that councillors are raising around this issue is the issue of collecting of revenue, right? To say councillors owed over $50 million in terms of debts, in particular for water, right? They're going to collect their revenue through the smart water meters. How do you strike a balance now to the issue, say water is a right, and also council wants to collect their revenue? How do you strike a balance there?
It's very important for council to be viable and to be able to recover the cost that they put when they're purifying water, the money that is paid to engineers and other personnel, the money for maintenance of pipelines and so forth. So it's very crucial that our council raises all that money. But at the same time, we need to strike a balance with this issue of the right to water. So in my mind, I think what's crucial is for us to re-establish that social contract between the local authority and residents. So when we speak about accountability, people like to point at the council to say the council must do this, the council must do this. But accountability is a two-way street. We also have responsibilities as residents, and we also need to be accountable as residents. So part of that means that when we have a strong social contract, as residents we should participate in local authority processes, and as residents we should pay our rates. This will enable the local authority to function effectively and enable us to get good service delivered. And then also when we talk about the issue of debts, we also need to be mindful that yes, residents owe the council a lot of money. But in my mind, I do not think it's because residents are inherently irresponsible and don't want to pay their rent. In my past life, working a lot with poor prime communities, part of what we would find is that people would genuinely struggle to pay their rent because they do not have the money. Of course, there may be a few people who have the money but simply don't want to pay and are irresponsible. But I think that's the exception rather than the law. I find it a bit unfair that we always blame the poor for the situation that they sometimes find themselves in, when perhaps as communities, as a nation, we've failed so much when it comes to addressing the economic challenges that people face. But that having been said, it's important for people to be engaging constantly with their local authorities, their councillors, to try to understand some of these things so that real solutions can be found. I fear that we rush to some of these technological solutions such as smart water meters, sometimes for the sake of it being technology without first understanding the problem. Perhaps if we understand the real challenges that are being faced that lead to these deaths, then perhaps we can be able to find maybe even simpler solutions that don't require smart water meters, that will add a layer of cost as residents pay for the infrastructure and as residents pay for the third party, the private company that may come to supply these kinds of meters. And then the other analysis that I wanted to add when we talk about these issues of debts owed to council is that there are also government departments that owe the local authority money. In the past, we've heard of entities like parastatals, like ZESA, owing council a lot of money. So let's not just push this towards residents alone. There are many factors at play, and we need to be mindful of that. So at a very personal level, and people may not agree with this, I think these things like smart water meters, perhaps if we want to really, if we're so desperate about using smart water meters, let's test them in government buildings, let's test them in parastatals before we roll them out to the general populace, where many people are struggling to survive because of the economic challenges.
In terms of our infrastructure, is it that easy or compatible to just move from the meters that we have to smart water meters?
So part of our research findings was that when you put up the water meters, there's a lot of infrastructure that will need to go with this. Not least of all the water meters themselves that would have to be installed in every household. But then you'd also need to have an infrastructure that allows people to then top up those meters and the technology associated with that. And all that comes with expenses that then eventually get transmitted onwards to the consumer. So I'll just make a hypothetical example. So if you are paying $10 for your water for a family of 5 in a month at the moment, that will mean that if we migrate to smart water meters, because they would have to factor in the cost of the smart water meters that would put up the associated infrastructure, and then would also have to consider the cost of the middleman or the contractor who does the smart water meters. Factoring that in, our cost of water would increase. So there is a lot of expense that comes with installation of prepaid water meters that will be transferred to the people.
Thanks so much, Z, for that. Let's go to another speaker. Good morning to you, Tinashe.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So, like I said, my name is Tinashe. My background, I'm a civil engineer, expert in water issues. I think also it's important to realize that we even participate in the Dublin principles where it says water, everyone has a right to water, but water also has a social and economic good. And with smart meters, it is possible, and more often than not, it is done, that you can program what we call free basic water. So for everyone in Bulawayo, if you look at your bill, you're not charged for all the water that came through your meter. There's a certain portion that is allocated to you that is free. And that volume of water has been calculated based on both UN principles, but also previous studies that were done that says this is the amount of water that you need to survive and to have a decent experience, a human experience. After that, the meter cuts off and then you have to pay for the excess water. So it's not that people won't get access to water if you're poor. You won't get access to water if you are unable to raise some money this year. It's just that any excess water beyond what you are entitled to for free is paid for. And that is also on a fair market, or it's very fair and it's very social, because it means that it affects everyone equally. And when people say, oh, but if I'm rich, I can use more water, then yeah, but then we charge you for it. And also there's a stepped tariff system where the more water you use, the higher it goes up, and this applies to every country in the world. Maybe start with the infrastructure. So the smart meters, the current model they work using, it's called a LoRa network. It's a low battery powered network. So the standard meters that I know now, the battery operates for 5 to 10 years and needs to be replaced afterwards. So they're not affected by power cuts. In terms of signal fidelity or data fidelity, that's something that usually comes with a package where they say they guarantee signal fidelity, almost like how the ZESA meters work on. But then those ones you can charge the battery because when you plug in, But yeah, in terms of the infrastructure, the signaling almost similar. So Bulawayo's infrastructure on average is over 50 years old. It actually needs to be replaced. And the city of Bulawayo has mentioned this in their master plan that you can find on their website. The city of Bulawayo mentions that pipe replacement is a key priority. But the reason why this hasn't happened is because of revenue, of resources. It's not that easy to replace pipes in terms of the financial cost. But I think the hope here is that by installing smart water meters and people then being able to pay for the excess water beyond the free basic water that you get, if you want to use excess, then at least we can start choosing that revenue to pay for things like pipe replacement, to pay for things like rehabilitating the bores at Epping Forest for the Nyamalovo Aquifer, to pay for things like making sure that we buy new pumps so that our pumps don't break down at Nlema, and our reservoirs get filled up in time. And then to say, how does this then affect the water rationing in the future? I think the idea is that if people reduce their consumption, because now you know how much you're spending, people can survive on 5,000 liters per day. We saw it in Cape Town during day zero. People were surviving on 80 liters per day. I thought it was impossible, but I survived on 60 liters a day. It was quite possible. I think the idea when you start using smart water meters is that when people can start using less water, then you have more water available for supply, and maybe hopefully you reduce the water rationing. But also our water rationing is also not just because that there's not enough water. Sometimes our pumps break down. It won't be an immediate, now everyone has smart water, there's no water rationing. As long as there's a drought, there probably would be some water rationing or some water management for a while, until we can fix the issue of leakage, until we can fix the issue of our pumps and our boreholes in Lima.
That's a wrap, guys. We've come to the end of the show.
From myself, Brighton Dube,
And Nonhlanhla Mapigwa, it's bye for now.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode. For feedback, you can contact us on 263 777 470017. Don't forget to follow and like our social media pages.